I've been trying to figure out how I should even approach this. What should the topic be? This is gonna be super ranty because it's been going on for a very long time, but I have to start at the very beginning of this game. We had a good system. It was brave attacks. You break the target, you get points, you attack them. That's your damage output. So it evolved into doing a brave attack and then bam, instant HP follow-up. Way back in the olden days, we only had Cloud that had the brave HP mix. And he was very widely considered one of the best because he could do it at the same time. When you factor in the turn count plus brave attacks waiting to do HP, it just doesn't scale well in the slightest. There was obviously a problem there. So what they did was, okay, let's just give them a follow-up with an HP attack, okay? Problem solved. Well, then everyone leaves themselves open. Then we also have the problem of supports that don't really do that. So then we started giving them higher turn rate. But they were wasting turns, you know, Yuna's a big example. Then we push further down the line and people start getting brave attacks with HP attacks. So everybody can do what Cloud does. Then we push towards the Chaos era. At least on JP. It was different on Global because the foresight, so it wasn't anywhere near as painful. So on JP, if you didn't have certain characters, well, I'm sorry, you had to wait a little bit, otherwise you were getting your butt handed to you. That's just what happened. Now, I've told that story countless times, but just to summarize, without a certain set of characters, missing resources, you didn't know what was coming up next, it wasn't a fun time. But it eased into it maybe around the halfway point. Halfway point, towards the end, okay, let's say around 75% of the way through, it was okay. But then we get to the point in which we're at, it's not quite Lufenia, but it's right before we start getting the chaos challenges. Things start to get interesting. We see a bunch of characters and whatnot, and we're having fun. We can play characters again, and it seemed like a good time. Lufenia hits. I'm not really sure what's gonna happen. I sit there, test things, and say, okay, is this orb really important? Because it doesn't really seem like it's doing much. If you can just sit there and just eat the hit with certain characters, it's pointless. So they take that away. We dodge the orb. They take that away. Fine. You gotta survive the orb. Pretty simple. Play the fight normally. You can paralyze them, do a bunch of other cheap tactics. You can just stop it so many different ways, so it gets removed. What happens next? This is the funny part. This is the one I just can't get over. They start slapping on the most ridiculous requirements that have absolutely nothing to do with the fight, the design, the mechanics, the boss, the characters, anything. It's just, okay, since this character on the banner uses fire, well, you're gonna bring fire. It has nothing to do with the fight. Why are we bringing fire? Now, way down the road, now this is gonna be a really good example because I'm gonna go through a bunch of these. Once we get to one of the most recent story chapters on JP, the Tiamat boss. The orb is 100, I think it's 150k damage or more at once with a fire attack. Simply because Vivi gets his LD at that time on JP. We go to FEOD Transcendence. We got an orb that says do wind elemental damage. It's like, wait, what? That's weird. In fact, you know what? Because I'm on the game right now. I have no idea what I'm going to be putting on this screen. But at this point, it doesn't really matter because the stance is the same. The orbs, they don't really add anything to the fight. It's just there to compensate for lazy game design. The bosses virtually don't have mechanics. They have slapped on gimmicks. Now let me go to Is it 4 or is it 5? It's 5. Okay, it's definitely 5 because I have Bartz here, even though I don't need him, which is the frustrating part. Yup, you gotta do wind. You gotta do wind damage and you gotta do elemental. How are you going to do the damage to them with the wind and imperil when they're resistant to it? They literally resist it. Bartz is the only option via call or just bringing him on the team. Now this is what I'm talking about. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You're literally just slapping stuff on to these bosses. It's bad enough that you already take them and just reskin them consistently. We barely have new boss fights. I don't get it. So I guess this section is the Lufenia Orb is pretty much useless, and all you do is just add the same thing to every single character, thus invalidating some in certain scenarios. Now, it wasn't always like this. It wasn't. They had some differences here and there, but it's like, as of recent on JP, there's a good meme. It's called, hey, this next person just gonna get a follow-up, because everyone just gets a follow-up. Follow-up into Brave Gains. Brave Gains into multi-HP dumps. That's literally what comes after all the Brave HP attacks. Because there's no other way to do damage fast enough. Because the turn counts just keep getting tighter and tighter. The Brave reduction keeps getting higher and higher. You keep adding more auras on these bosses. And let's not forget, this is the part people forget about on JP specifically, when they're like, oh, I don't know how to do damage. I can't do damage. Well, first of all, you have to remember that their stats are consistently raising. And it's all the stats. It's attack, initial brave, max brave, defense, speed. Is it speed sometimes? I think speed is in there too. All that raises every single time you get them to a threshold on top of the brave reduction. Just drop their defense or just raise the HP damage you have. Why not do both? Because trying to fight this brave reduction is ridiculous. You can hardly get past it. Because like I just said, it's not just the brave reduction. Their stats just keep going up. Higher and higher. More defense, more HP, more brave reductions on top of an aura that's already probably reducing who knows what, depending on the fight that they want to. You know, the perfect example. It is the Guy Lufenia Plus. Those things barely take any damage. So they make the orb, hey man, you gotta attack while you got HP damage up on them. I mean, I guess that has something to do with the fight to an extent, because you kinda need it. But mechanically wise, with the boss's kit, it's like, maybe kinda not really. Was there even a point to this Lufenia orb? It seemed good in theory, but it's really bad. But I will not completely discredit them. They may have had terrible fights. But I just saw something very interesting, and it is literally the day before the event took place. Not even the day before, maybe a few hours or so. I was talking, how do you pronounce her name? Is it Shulk or Woman in Child Body? There we go, perfect. This event takes place, right? So basically what goes down is just, oh my god, the helicopter. There's a helicopter and there's an ad. You can't launch the ad because, you know, Cid Raines. Cid Raines exists, so we have to counter him, right? You have to counter all the new stuff in order for them to get other stuff out. That's just how they do it. They sabotage stuff that they literally just release for other things. And they constantly do this. Like, you can look down every single fight. Paladin is the biggest example of this. The amount of Holy Absorb after he gets his BT is absurd. Like, why am I going for characters if you're just gonna counter them? You're sabotaging. This is borderline a scam. It's like, why am I gonna get the character so that they get shut down for maybe a few months, and I just have them? But back to the point of her event. So you can't launch the ad because, you know, Sid Reigns is out at this time. So once you finally kill it, the helicopter is able to be targeted because it's invincible, got 100% evasion, whatever you want to call it. So the second that the ad dies, I saw something interesting. Like I was saying, I was discussing this maybe a few hours to a day beforehand. The helicopter drops its resistance to brave damage, and I think defense. And I was like, wait, what? I was just talking about, what if they just put the criteria for the Lufenia orb and integrate it with the FF7 stagger mechanic, FF13 stagger mechanic? You do this so you can give some redeeming qualities to the orb, okay? It's punishing if it goes off, but if you push it up, it just stays up for maybe a little bit and comes back down depending on what the orb is. It really varies. But the fact of the matter is, since you're pushing it up, it should be used in a advantageous way. It's kind of like breaking somebody's guard, okay? And that's exactly what we saw in that fight. So I'm like, you guys clearly have the ability to design some good mechanics, but it's so random. Vast majority of the time, it's just not good. It's like the thought is there, but the execution is just awful. And I think that's really what I wanted to touch on. It's just, the whole approach is not good. You release characters, you sabotage them for other characters, we don't see them again. You neglect characters for like 3 years or so, and they come back on banners and they haven't even gotten an update. I mean, if you don't want to give them a new weapon because you have to wait for other characters, that's fine, but you bring them back in like Chaos era form in Lufenia Plus. Like, are you serious? I can't even, I'm surprised I can't hit a 0. A 1 is expected, but a 0, okay, that's more appropriate. Because these sets suck. That whole Sarah thing, that was inexcusable. Characters from 3 years ago, inexcusable. I just don't know. It's very strange. It's like the ability is there, but it's not being used. A lot of times being wasted. A lot of disappointment is occurring. I don't like these fights. I went from SpongeBob at the Krusty Krab every single day to Squidward at the Krusty Krab every single day. I'm not enjoying these fights. The design is not good. Tell me why Vayne is getting literally countered in his own release Lufenia Plus. It's a break orb. If you break them, you keep the orb up. But if you push them away, which he's going to because he goes a lot, plus he's breaking, after 12 turns, they will instantly jump in front of you with an AoE attack and one-shot the team. There's a few exceptions with like HP amounts, but you're basically gonna get one-shotted. Especially if they break you. Because the break bonus works against you for some reason. That's another thing. Can we please just get rid of that thing? You're probably better off like reworking this whole Lufenia orb mechanic, getting rid of the break bonus, or just implementing it a little bit better. There's just so many things. Fixing the UI. It's starting to feel like there is no care here. Like, you see the problems, but you're more concerned with pushing out things rather than fixing what's already here. You're League of Legending the game. Is giving somebody the League of Legends treatment valid? Yes, it is, because that's exactly what it feels like. You can even go to the skills, hold it down, and read the description. It's like a whole college master thesis for one skill. Done. I'm drifting a little bit, but that's the point. Just really bad design. I'm not really sure where they're going with this. The ability to do good is here, but the execution, it's just not here. And I would highly advise that this gets fixed before it's too late, because you're not on a good path right now. It's really bad. The last thing you want is for people to stop playing because you just don't pay attention to anything other than dropping new content. We have existing things that have to get fixed, that haven't even been addressed. Yes, it is extremely free to play. Yes, it is fun, but you're literally killing all of that with the decisions you're making. And I guess that's where I'm gonna stop this. Let me get this swig of water first, because that's a lot that I just spit out. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I mean, you can still play the game, but Lufenia Plus sucks. It just killed a lot. You need so much just to get through it. And it's not that I can't beat it, it's the fact that I am beating it and know what it takes to beat it, which is why I'm saying all of this. Needs some work, man. Need work. It needs work. A lot of work. But that is all I have to say, at least for now, until something else stupid happens.